This is Newsmax TV. I'm Ashley Martella. We're pleased to be joined once again by a legendary journalist whose work has won him multiple awards. Arnaud de Borchgrave was with Newsweek magazine for 30 years, 25 of them as chief foreign correspondent. During that span, he covered most of the world's major news events, including 18 wars. Right now, he's a senior fellow at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, editor-at-large at United Press International and The Washington Times, as well as a Newsmax correspondent. Welcome back to Newsmax, sir.
Thank you, Ashley.
The United States, Britain, France, Russia, Germany, and China reportedly have agreed to begin drawing up new sanctions on Iran to block its nuclear weapons program. Now, do you think that will happen? And if it does, what impact would that have on Iran's nuclear weapons program?
Actually, if it does, it'll be the lowest common denominator among all those powers. China has got some long-term arrangements with Iran for oil deliveries going over 10 years, next 10 years. Russia now, after the latest terrorist incident in Moscow, may be a little more amenable than it was a week ago. There will be sanctions. Whether they will bring Iran to a different viewpoint on their nuclear ambitions, I doubt it very seriously. They've been at it for 25 years.
The Obama administration was very upset with Israel over the announcement that it was going to expand a Jewish settlement in East Jerusalem, which is land claimed by the Palestinians. However, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu claims Jerusalem is Israel's capital, not a settlement. Where do you see this dispute headed?
Well, I think I've long argued that you're not going to see a Palestinian state. It's certainly not in my lifetime. You don't have the makings of a Palestinian state. The West Bank today has about 150 Israeli settlements with a total population of 300,000. East Jerusalem has 200,000 Israeli citizens living there, making a Palestinian capital impossible. So where will this Palestinian state be? Certainly not in the West Bank. There's no other place to put them. So one day, in my view, I won't be around to see it, we're moving willy-nilly toward a one-state solution, which would be very much like Lebanon, with both Jews and Arabs. Most Israelis cannot conceive of that. Of course, you can't conceive it in the next 10 years, but 15, 20 years from now, with a new generation, or two new generations, it may well happen.
Will Palestinians be provoked by this, if this in fact happens?
Well, Palestinians, I think, willy-nilly also are moving toward another intifada. This will be Intifada 3 or Intifada 4, depending on how you're counting. New generations, the younger kids are already demonstrating, as you've seen, throwing stones. The next phase may very well be bullets. But the idea we have to get out of our heads is that we are working towards a contiguous, viable Palestinian state, which is how President Bush 43 described it, and actually how President Obama has described it too. It has to be contiguous and viable. There's no space for such a state. And I think most people would agree, especially since the ill-fated journey of President Obama to the Middle East, and also Prime Minister Netanyahu's visit to Washington during the AIPAC convention. You put all of these things together, a Palestinian state is not about to happen.
So the phrase, a roadmap to peace, is an oxymoron, pretty much?
It's for a roadmap that's no longer on the map.
Now, Obama seems to be moving the U.S. away from its tilt in favor of Israel. There's been some talks of some snubs when Netanyahu came to Washington. Can you shed some light on this?
Well, obviously there were snubs, and no question when Vice President Biden arrived in Jerusalem 3 weeks ago, or 4 weeks ago, I've forgotten now, no question that he was embarrassed to the point of being insulted, and that's what caused the crisis. Did Prime Minister Netanyahu know that they were about to make an announcement about 1,600 new Israeli homes in East Jerusalem? I don't think he did. He has some right-wing members of his cabinet who did that to embarrass him, in my judgment. He was taken by surprise just as much as everybody else on the timing.
Okay, another subject. A committee of lawmakers in Britain says the term special relationship should no longer be applied when referring to the United States because it isn't a true reflection of the relationship between the two countries. Now, Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee says the government should be less deferential toward Americans. Arnaud, are we in danger of being estranged, becoming estranged from our top ally, and does it have anything to do with the actions of the Obama administration?
I doubt that very seriously. The British and the United States are deeply involved in each other's affairs, especially in the world of intelligence, the world of counterterrorism, the world of military secrets, There are all sorts of things that the British are entitled to that no other country in the world is entitled to, and vice versa. So I don't think that's about to... It gets to be eroded from time to time, depending on which government is in office in London, and also which government is in office in Washington. President Obama clearly does not feel pretty close to the British Prime Minister these days.
That's right. He snubbed Gordon Brown was here.
He snubbed Gordon Brown, didn't have a meal with him, etc. Those are little things, in my judgment, in the overall picture, which is a very close alliance.
Escalating border violence. The Washington Times, of which you were editor-in-chief for 6 years, has a story with a headline reading, "Border Violence Threatens Americans." It cites the killing last month in a border town of 2 U.S. citizens, including an employee of the U.S. consulate in Juarez, and the killing of an Arizona rancher. Is it becoming open season on Americans by these Mexican drug gangs, and is Mexico in danger of becoming a narco-republic?
Well, I think to a great extent, Mexico is already, like Colombia was, a narco-republic. It's a major crisis for the United States, no question in my mind, but we've been so busy with Iraq and Afghanistan that we don't see what's happening on our own border. And that's actually why I think the next presidential election will be on a platform that will ask the United States to come home, rebuild our country before China eats our lunch. There is so much unfinished business in America, whether it's infrastructure. We were reading last week about these drain pipes in Washington collapsing all over the place. You've got school system collapsing in many areas. So many unfinished problems that we have in the United States. I see the situation coming up actually very much like the one that Eisenhower came back to in 1952. He was a war hero, NATO Supreme Commander, and it was basically his platform, come home America, let's finish the war in Korea, come home and rebuild our country, and we owe the interstate highway system to that particular period under General Eisenhower.
You've written about the world economic situation, and you don't paint a very rosy picture of it. Recently, the dollar has run up as the euro comes under pressure from financial basket cases like Greece, Spain, and Ireland. What do you see happening with the European Union?
Well, the European Union will never be a United States of Europe. They've just picked as their president an unknown, diminutive Belgian who nobody had ever heard of him, and he's now head of this. That's because the major heads of state inside the European Union, whether it's France, Britain, Italy, Germany, they don't want to be superseded by a higher ranking figure on the world stage. That would deprive them of their visits all over the world as a head of state. So there's that inbuilt resistance to forming a real United States of Europe. The only chance the Europeans had of doing that was in 1952 when they created the European Army, and the French then sabotaged that in the days of Pierre Mendès France when he was the Prime Minister, and they abolished any idea of a European army. Once you have an army with mixed units of Germans, Italians, etc., Europe has been created, and that they're not willing to do. All the things that would create a real United States of Europe, they're not willing to go that far.
Okay. Do you see the dollar as still being the preeminent currency in, say, 10 years from now?
Well, I've learned from very bitter experience, actually, that astrology has made political forecasting look respectable. There's no way you can tell what's going to happen 10 years from now. You have some rough ideas. It seems to me at the present rate of decline of the U.S. in economic and financial terms, and what is happening in China, you have to say that that is obviously a big, big threat for the 10 to 15 years to come. Whether it's going to happen or not, I have no idea.
As bad as things appear in Europe, some economists warn that U.S. states are in danger of defaulting. Chief among the huge economy of California is Exhibit A, you might say. Could bond investors be in trouble here at home?
No question. Everybody's in trouble here at home. I think we're on a plateau right now before we head south again. The Chinese equation hasn't changed. We're still borrowing $2 to $3 billion a day, principally from China, to maintain the world's highest standard of living based on conspicuous consumption at a time of growing world shortages. It doesn't compute. But so far, no one's found an alternative.
Corporations are telling their investors they see billion-dollar charges on the passage of Obamacare. Maybe $2 trillion. What's your take on the legislation from an investor point of view?
I really don't have a take. I wish I had time to read the 2,200 pages. I think at the age of 84, I'm not impacted too severely by all of this. and you know very well there are going to be all sorts of Republican challenges to this. So what we see today, I think, is not what you're going to see when it comes out of the sausage machine.
Well, the Heritage Foundation estimates the final cost of the bill is going to be $2.5 trillion, not the nearly trillion that the administration says. What would that do to the economy, $2.5 trillion for the health care?
Well, I think it would obviously mean a diminution of health care, the quality of the health care. I know some people, incidentally, who are now flying to India or Thailand for major operations because they can have them in impeccably clean clinics with very competent surgeons for a fraction of what it costs in the United States.
Okay, Treasury Chief Tim Geithner, among others, is warning that we should expect unemployment to remain quite high for a long time. Meanwhile, interest rates are likely to shoot up as government spending keeps rising. Could the recovery, if there is one, fall apart?
No question. I think I indicated that we are on a plateau right now before we start heading south again. Could it all fall apart? I have no idea, but that we'll be in serious trouble in the months to come, no question. Okay,
here's a question. It may sound like a stupid question, but it's obvious. Is a jobless recovery really a recovery?
No, it's not really a recovery, but that's the way we're headed because so many enterprises around the country are back heading north again, but with fewer employees. And I think they tend to remain with fewer employees. They've found cost-cutting measures, fewer workers. So to say that that would be a recovery and unemployment is still up where it is today or higher, obviously it's not a recovery.
Why do you think they keep pushing this recovery thing? You hear Geithner say there's a recovery underway. You hear the White House spokesman Robert Gibbs. You hear Obama himself mentioning recovery.
It's very difficult for an administration in power to say no. Everything we're doing does not seem to be producing any results, and we don't think it's a real recovery. No government could do that.
Okay, oil prices remain quite high meanwhile, over $80 a barrel. You were recently in the Gulf. Why do you think oil prices remain high, although there's a global recession?
I think they're going to go a lot higher than they are today, depending on how the Iranian crisis comes out. All it requires is a minor incident in the Gulf, in the Straits of Hormuz, the Iranians sowing a few mines as retaliation perhaps for an Israeli bombing of one of their nuclear sites. All of that can drive oil up to $200, $300, $400 very, very quickly.
All right, gold continues to be strong, very high, for investors a good deal maybe. Even George Soros has made an investment play in gold. You've been bullish on gold for a very long time. Do you see that as a continued hedge against inflation and international troubles?
Well, I have some gold shares in the portfolio, but I'm not out buying gold. I know some people who are not only out buying gold, but buying gold mines. And they see gold going up to 2,500 within the next 3 or 4 years.
Last, China. Google had a showdown with China and lost. Do you think this is a bad omen going forward for the prospects of a free society?
Of course, but is the ultimate aim of China to become a democracy comparable to Western Europe or to the United States? I doubt it very seriously. They're trying to find a new way of governing while at the same time opening things up sufficiently so that the youth of the country will not feel constrained. They'll still enjoy what they consider to be their freedoms. I think we're going through a similar evolution. I think both countries have decided for different reasons that the system, whether it's the Chinese system or our free enterprise system in America, cannot possibly be the final stage in human evolution.
And for the layman, it's been said that China owns our debt right now. They own us. So what are the long-range implications of that?
Well, China, from all the experts I've talked to, people who go to China frequently, who operate at that level, they are hoist on exactly the same petard as we are. There's no way they could suddenly decide to get rid of all their, I think it's about $2 trillion they have now in US paper. There's no way they could get rid of that without collapsing the whole system. So we're in this sort of, both of us have an interest in maintaining the present system of borrowing $2 to $3 billion a day from China. And we're both stuck in this as far as anyone can see into the future. Beyond that, I'm not an astrologer.
Always a pleasure to see you, sir. Thanks so much for your insightful thoughts and your explanation of this very complicated events.
Thank you, Ashley.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV. Sarah Palin's new book, Going Rogue in American Life, will be released on November 17th. You can be among the first to get your copy. Check out our incredible free offer for Sarah's new book. Just go to Newsmax.com and click on the top banner for this great offer. Act today.